Hello again, and this is Become a Competent Biblical Counselor, and I'm Dr. Dave Jones, and today's episode is entitled, It's Not the Kids, It's the Parents. And I'm going to be looking at Proverbs 22:6. In the King James it says, Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. This is a subject matter that, believe it or not, I get quite a lot of, from parents with children less than 10 years old to teenagers on the way up to children that are just starting college. Parents are just totally frustrated on the one hand and totally baffled on the other with respect to how are they supposed to raise their children? What are they supposed to expect? Everybody raises children differently. Everybody has a different way of looking at things. Some ways work out, some ways don't. A lot of people will just call and say, I have children that I can't control and I don't know what to do, or something of that effect. So in this episode, I'm going to kick around some ideas with you, some things that you'll be able to share with your counselees that maybe you haven't thought of. Maybe you have some experiences in raising your children that have been very successful. My point is, use them. But the scripture of Proverbs that I referred to sets the stage, sets the pattern, if you will, of what you're supposed to do as a parent. You might want to raise your child totally different than you were raised, or that your neighbors are raising their children. The point is, there has to be a plan, and I'm going to give you some ideas that you can share in addition to your own experiences in raising children. First of all, what I tell parents is that what happens in the home is not a democracy. There's no voting. Children do not get a vote. Children are not the decision makers. Children are not the ones who set the rules. So the point is, what happens in the home is something that is determined and created by the parents and sometimes the caregivers in the home. And there's a sense of urgency as when you start setting rules in the home. Sometimes parents wait until the children are 12 and 13 years old and try to legislate some rules that the children are to follow. But you know what? That's too late. You have to undo a lot of things in order to get back to where you should be. So why not start early? Parents have to start early. And I think it's important to realize, too, that it's not the parents' responsibility to be the friend for their children. There are far too many times where the parents are asking for the opinions of the children, and the opinions of the children is what makes the decision right or wrong. In other words, the children are setting the rules with respect to what's going to be for dinner, and what I'm going to eat, what I'm not going to eat, and where I'm going to eat, and if I'm going to eat. Far too many times we have parents letting their child make those kind of decisions, or for that matter, deciding when they're going to go to bed and what they are going to do before they go to bed, and the parents are allowing that to happen. So let's start with the younger children, 3, 4, 5 years old, and start creating some rules. And when you create these rules, make sure they are fair rules, and make sure that you take the time to explain to your children what the rules are and be very consistent with what those rules are going to be. Consistent being the reward and or discipline that's going to come as a result of obeying or disobeying the rules. And one of the things that really ensures communication with what you're saying and what the child is hearing is to ask the child to repeat the rule back to you. And if the child can do that, then you are assured of the fact that the child heard you and communicated back to you what the rule is, and there could be no reason or excuse for them not understanding what the rule is. Then that's an opportune time to explain the rule again. And with respect to rewards and discipline, make sure the reward is something that the child craves to continue doing. Playing with a certain toy, being in a certain room, watching a certain show on TV, whatever is very, very meaningful to that child, that is the reward and the continuation and the multiplication of that award to being obedient. On the other hand, what does the child dislike? Many children dislike the idea of having to go to bed early. So that would be a perfect opportunity and disciplinary tool to use with a child like that. And make sure that your rewards and your discipline is fair, not only for the child, but for you. How much do you want to get involved with rewarding and disciplining your child? So as life goes on, they get older, they get wiser, they get smarter, they get more belligerent at times, they get more demanding. So how do you continue? Well, you continue the process of the rules and the rewards and discipline dynamic with certain modifications, but you explain those to the child as they continue to grow within the area of interest that they have now created. And since we're still talking about the age group less than 12 years old, 13 years old, let's say, you have to be very much aware of the friends that they've picked out in school, the places where they go with these friends, the sleepovers that they have, the parents of these other friends, and you have to really determine who you want your child to interact with as far as those friendships. You all have heard the word influencers, or our children are being influenced outside of the home. And that is something that we really have no control over whatsoever. But if you look back at that verse, Proverbs 22:6, that is the whole purpose of it. You give children the rules that you have in your home and hope that they will apply those same rules and think differently about what's happening outside the home. And let me quickly add this. It is the parent's responsibility to select the friends, companions, and others that interact with their children. You see, it's this age group where they begin their social media interactions. As parents, you have to control that. You have to create rules around social media usage. You have to create rules that involve how often and when and what they are doing on social media. You have to participate in that. You cannot allow it to become a babysitter for you, for your children at this young age. And these same suggestions will go on until the child is out of high school and getting ready to go to college. Now we've got a whole different set of confusion and comparison that's going on in the child's life. It's at this time where children decide to leave home, whether it's going into the service, the military, whether it's getting a job, whether it's going to college. Everything changes. Their whole world is going to change. The influencers in their life are going to be very, very different and quite numerous. And it's at this point, if your child comes home to visit you after an extended absence, whether it's at school or in the military, whatever, they might totally be somewhat different than what you expect. They might have their own opinions about things. They might feel like, yeah, I'm home with mom and dad, but I'm not going to clean up my room. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to follow the rules because I'm an adult now. I don't have to do that. I have had so many parents call me and say, my daughter came home on spring break and she just does nothing in the home. And she feels that she can do whatever she wants because she's an adult, and it's just driving us nuts. We don't know what to do. Let me tell you what I told this mother to do. I said, you have to understand and explain to your daughter that she left home. It was her choice, but she left the home. Secondly, it is no longer her home. It is her parents' home. Her parents live there. Her parents pay for that. It is their home. She is now visiting the home that she once called her own home. She has another home. She has another address. She has another place where she socializes. This is no longer her home as she once had it before. There are new rules when she comes to visit, and she should be aware of the fact that she's visiting her parents' home. And to that end, how long are the parents supposed to be responsible for their adult child? Where's the financial responsibility now with respect to the child? That's another rule that the parents have to lay out, discuss between themselves, and how they're going to respond to requests for financial support. Is there going to be any? And if so, what? If there's not going to be any, then you need to explain why that is the case. I had a lady call me about the problem that she was having with her two daughters. Both daughters were in college. One was a freshman, the other was a junior, and they both were in a different college in the state of Florida. Their father of the children was a professional basketball coach. And the daughters grew up in a very affluent home with many different kinds of permissions and freedoms to take advantage of life that most children don't have that opportunity. So when they went to college, they assumed that mom and dad were just going to continue showering them with money and gifts and the freedoms that they had grown up with. The mother called. She says, we just can't do that anymore. First of all, when they come home, they are uncontrollable. My daughter wants to have friends over all hours of the night, and sometimes they bring their booze in. She says, and I know that they're drinking, and maybe they're having drugs. I don't know that, but I feel very, very uncomfortable with them in my house. And so when I talk to my daughters about this, all they want to do is argue with me. They'll throw things. They won't clean up their rooms. They call me names. They slam doors. They throw dishes. It's just chaotic whenever they are home. And we're afraid when they come home, and we're very relieved when they go back to college. But what do? Well, I told her, I said, it's your home. You and your husband have to set rules for the daughters when they're visiting you. That home where you and your husband are not their daughters' homes anymore. You need to put your foot down and be very stern that this is how they're going to act and behave when they're in your home. If not, they can just go somewhere else. And do you know how the wife responded to that suggestion? She says, I can't do that. Those are my babies. I can't throw them out into the street. I can't be like that to them. So you see, there's another response. Now you get an idea of what the rules may have been like with these two girls growing up in an attitude in the house like that. Now mama can't bring herself to responding and disciplining the daughters in order for the sanctity and freedom and peace that she and her husband deserve in their home. Finally, I told the mother, I said, you're not doing your daughters any good as far as what's going to happen when they get out of college and go in to get a job, and they're working for somebody who's going to set rules. You've done nothing to prepare your daughters for that inevitability where they might not like the rules that the boss is setting up for them. Well, they didn't like your rules either. Look where it got them. So this is just an obtuse example of what could go wrong and what is going wrong in so many homes in our country. We parents have to take control, but we have to also understand that we're the ones who have the opportunity and the responsibility to restore some dignity and sanctity in our homes. We may have done as much as we can do according to Proverbs 26 to raise our children, but when our children get old enough to make their own decisions, we have to welcome the fact that we've trained them at least to be responsible enough to make decisions. They might be right, they might be wrong, but at least give them the opportunity to make their own choices. We have to let our children do that. We have to give them the freedom to fail in order for them to learn from their mistakes. A lot of parents don't realize that. They don't want their children to go through problems or have any kind of outside influences in their life. But you know what? It's going to happen. And the parents have to say, you know what? This too will pass. And my children will learn from this because I will always be there to help them recover what is left in their life and to continue to be like the father who welcomed his prodigal son home after lessons of failure and despair. So it's not a losing project, it's just a project. Thanks for listening. Talk to you later.